In this next section, I'm going to talk about pseudo-elements and pseudo-states. So I want to be clear that this is some really advanced CSS, and I don't expect you to actually memorize this. What I want from you is when you're presented with a situation while you're working on your website, you want to have all the knowledge that you can so you can say, okay, this might be a way that I can solve this issue that I'm having. But just keep in mind that no one actually memorizes all of this. With that being said, we're going to jump into pseudo-classes. So back on W3 Schools, just check out this article. A pseudo-class is used to define a special state of an element. So the most common one is probably the hover class. I know we talked about that, which just targets an element specifically when it's being hovered up on. You'll see this with links a lot in the page. Actually, there might be an example of that in here. Yeah. So just an unvisited link, you could do something versus one that's been visited, versus one that's being hovered on, versus one that's being actively clicked on. And the way that you apply a pseudo-class is just on the element or on the selector, and then you add this colon and then the hover class. So it could be hover, link, visited, not the hover class, the pseudo-class, sorry. Link, visited, hover, active, there's a whole bunch of them. If I scroll down, there's a whole list that you could use here. Alright, so I'll show you a quick example. Say you have a button. Actually, click me. Alright, so we have this button up here. That's kind of hard to see. It's a little better. Let's get a little bigger. I don't remember that. Oh, it's border. Alright, so for the record, none of that was necessary. I just like my buttons to be pretty. Okay, anyway. And then say I want this button to change when you hover over it. So you could just do button, hover, and then you can change any of these properties pretty much that you have set. So maybe I want the padding to be 5. So now I'm just hovering over it and it's changing to apply these settings. And the pseudo class is more specific than just this button, so it's going to overwrite this padding 1 and replace it with this padding 5. What you'll see a lot more often is you'll change the color, so it's background. So maybe instead of cornflower blue, you do dark blue. There. So you see that effect on a lot of websites. Yeah, alright, let's think of another one. The first child and last child is a pretty useful one, so let me get rid of this. Say I have a div here, and then okay, alright, and then let's apply some styling. We'll do background tomato. No, we don't need a margin. And then say I just wanted to target the first paragraph. I could do div paragraph. There. And so it's selecting all of the paragraphs that appear as the first child of the element. So this paragraph is the first child of this div parent, so this is the one that's going to be targeted. So if I were to move that one up there, now see they're both being targeted. You have 2 that are blue. That's because this is now the first child of the body the body tag you can't see here on Dablet, but it's there. And this one's also being targeted because it's the first child of this div element. So I recommend maybe checking out a few of the elements on this list. There's nth child. Here, I can show you that one quick. I could do it like that. Move this back in here. So that gives you some alternating text. Odd, now I switch the order. I think you can do this with zeros and ones too. Nope. I guess if you put an actual number in, it'll target specifically that child. One thing that's kind of annoying in CSS that is different from some other languages is that when it does these nth childs here, it's not index of 0. So if you have taken any other computer classes you might be used to, if you have an array of items, the very first item is at an index of 0 instead of 1. That's not the case here. So if I do 0, there's nothing. If I do 1, it's the first paragraph. So just something to keep in mind. That's why when I do even, it's choosing the second and the fourth one. If CSS used index of 0, even would have been this one here. And I guess that one too. Alright, so play around with that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should show you on there. I think I'll just talk about pseudo-elements next. So pseudo-class, remember, is used to define a special state of an element. A pseudo-element is used to describe specific parts of an element. Examples would be if you wanted to style the first line of a paragraph, or if you want to insert content before or after the content of an element. So say, this is something I need to do on my personal website. Say I have some links here. Maybe to a contact page. So this will open it in a new tab. We'll keep that one normal, and then get these here. Alright, so I'm missing something kind of important. Portfolio. So I set up 3 links here. And if you remember, this target equals underscore blank is going to open this in a new tab or window. So now I got my three links up in here. So if I wanted to target all of the anchor tags, I could do, maybe I want them to have a color of cornflower blue, and maybe I want to get rid of that underline there. Okay, so a pseudo element is applied using the double colon here, so like this, and then let me show you the list real quick. Here's some. So this is how you target what immediately comes after the element. You can do before. First letter I mentioned, like if you were targeting the very first letter in a paragraph, you could do that. We're gonna try using this after one here. So what I'm doing here is saying after every anchor tag, I want you to insert some content that says hi. So if I look up here, after each of these now it says hi. Say that I wanted to add a little piece of content that lets you know when something is going to open in a new window so that you're prepared for it to navigate away from the page you're on. a lot of space there. Okay, so now each of these are going to have this little thing here, but we have a problem. This one doesn't open in a new window. So I only want to apply it to these two. So I could do something like a first child, a last child, or put a class on here and specifically target these, but there's a much easier way. I can apply this pseudo element to any selector, so all I have to do is target all anchor tags that have an attribute of target set to blank. And so if you remember from the selectors page in the Duquette book how we can target elements that have specific attributes, use these brackets. So now you can see, I'm going to make these. So now you can see that only the ones that have this target of blank are getting this content applied to it. I should add that to my website. If by the time you see this, I have these added to my websites, I inspired myself. So this is a pretty complicated looking selector here. You have your element, you're selecting all article or anchor tags, you're selecting anchors that have a target attribute, and that target attribute is set to blank, and then specifically you're targeting what immediately comes after it. So it's a pretty cool CSS statement. Alright, so yeah, check out the rest of these. You can try changing the first letter of a paragraph or the first line of a paragraph. There's a lot of things you could do with that.